Howdy, Banjo Ben here with Jake at Banjo Ben's General Store. We're going to talk banjo heads, and we're going to try not to get too above y'all today. You know, talking all this intellectual stuff.
Yeah.
Going to kind of try to keep it down on the banjo player's level. We are going to talk about some numbers. Just going to warn you, a little bit of math. We're going to use an instrument here called a ruler. But in all seriousness, you know, people, they wonder what kind of banjo head did they buy to replace their banjo. And by the way, Jake, besides the obvious pow when your banjo head breaks, when would you think about replacing your banjo head?
Well, you know, it just depends. My dad had an old Gibson that I swear he had that head on there 30 years and it still sounded good. Kind of a telltale sign is if it's holding tension. You know, sometimes they'll slowly start to separate and they don't necessarily have that kapow to let you know that it's broken.
And not visible.
Right, and yeah, because it's hidden by the tension hoop. And so, you know, if you have one of the drum dials or the pocket dials or one of the many tools you can use for measuring tension on a head, it's a good idea to check them periodically. And if you find one area is really low and it won't come up to tension, chances are it's pulled apart. So, and you know, just sound too. You know, if it starts sounding tubby and there's nothing you can do about it, might be good time for a head change.
You know, I like when my wife washes the sheets and I get in fresh sheets, and I think a new banjo head's kind of like that. You know.
Yeah, it's a little scratchier.
A little scratchier. Yeah. You know, speaking of scratchy, the frosting, we have various frostings, don't we?
Yeah, there's all different types of these heads for different sounds. You know, by far for bluegrass, the most common is just the frosted top. But there's different degrees of that. Some people will frost theirs a little more than others. Some like a little bit of a thinner frosting. You know, it kind of depends on what sound you're going for. The thicker the frosting or the thicker the head in general, the bassier the sound.
Right.
And so it depends on your particular banjo too. If you have a banjo that's already overly bassy, you may not want, you know, like a fiber skin head on it because it's going to be even more so.
Yeah.
But if you got a banjo that's really tinny, you may want something to fatten the tone up.
Yeah, and that's something that people may not think about, is that the banjo head plays such a role in your tone. So if you've got a banjo that you're not really happy with the tone, that's one of the things that you can somewhat easily exchange to see if it does something to the tone of your banjo. This is an 11-inch head. Most all of our bluegrass banjos are going to be 11-inch heads, so it's not the diameter that we're concerned necessarily about getting the right size. What we're concerned about is the crown depth or crown height. Talk about that.
Yeah, and you know, diameter-wise, although what is standardized now is 11-inch, if you had any of those like earlier import catalog banjos, they may not, a lot of those are sub 11-inch. There'd be like 10 and, you know, whatever, 10 and 15 sixteenths, or sometimes even 10 and 3/4, 10 and a half, I've seen. So it's a good idea, if you've got an old banjo that you're needing a replacement head, it's a good idea to measure the diameter still.
You need to take it off first to do that
accurately? Really, well, you can measure the diameter with it on the banjo. You just kind of go, the inner diameter of the tension hoop is going to get you pretty close. But honestly, the best way to get the best measurement is to remove the head that's on it and take a measurement. Now, there are some basic rules, like, you know, we're talking about Gibson Mastertone design banjos, which basically everything in the room behind me is going to fall in that category. And with all of those, so like if you have a flathead banjo, usually a medium or a high crown will work, usually. And if you have an archtop banjo, with an archtop tone ring, usually a low or a medium crown will work. So kind of a medium is usually a safe bet.
Okay.
But,
gotcha.
You know, there are all kinds of variables, even with like maybe this specific banjo that I need a head for, maybe the way it came together is just slightly out of spec and it needs a high crown for whatever reason. So always a good idea to measure the head, the crown height. So best way to do that is if you've got the existing head off the banjo, flip it over upside down. And you just take your ruler here and you measure the inner diameter of that ring. And as you'll see, this one comes out to really exactly 11 inches. If you know, make sure you're going straight with it. You're not like cattywampus like this. You know, oh, it's a 10-inch head over there, boy. So yeah, this is exactly 11 inches we'd expect. So you're measuring the inner diameter from inside of the aluminum ring, which this is called the stretcher band of the head traditionally. And then how you get the crown height. Here's the part that not a lot of people realize. It's actually this, that's the same on each side. It's this dimension here to the bottom of the ring. So basically, in both cases, we're measuring the head minus the ring.
Gotcha.
Right? And you'll see that should be coming out. You have to get the right angle on the camera. I'm just kind of holding the ruler there. It should be coming out right at 1/2 inch because this is a high crown, if I remember right. And there, you have to really, make sure you have a ruler that's got all the little 16th hash marks at least, because that's how much they'll vary by. You have a low crown's 3/8, medium 7/16, and a high is a 1/2 inch.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Very little difference between them. And basically that's it. If you got 11-inch diameter, 1/2 inch depth to the bottom of the ring, you got yourself your typical 11-inch high crown in that case. Or like I said, if it was 7/16, that'd be your medium crown.
Right. So let's just talk some crown height theory here. If you were going to err, you would want to err with a shorter crown, right? Because then all that's going to happen is your tension hoops is going to stop, right? And so your lugs are just not going to be as tight as or take up as much thread as normal. If you get a high crown when you need a low crown, then your tension hoops, you're going to run out of it. You can bottom out, and you can't perhaps not tighten your head as tight as you want to get.
The only thing there with sometimes, usually your perspective on that is absolutely correct. There are rare cases I've seen where the tension hoop itself, if you don't go with a high crown, let's say you go with a medium crown, if this is a banjo that needs a high crown, if you go with a medium or something like that, that tension hoop can set up just a little high where maybe you can't fret the last fret without the string bottoming out on it.
Gotcha.
So it depends on the style of tension hoop too. And another thing, a lot of people think that the crown height is gonna, like, I've had people buy a head and they take the old head off and they compare it and they're like, oh shoot, this one's taller. And so they think the action's gonna somehow be higher, like it's gonna set higher, but it's gonna set in the same place. The inside of the head's gonna rest on the rim or tone ring or whatever the case is, regardless. The only thing that changes is how far down this skirt area goes down the rim. And so the two things to consider are, am I gonna have tension hoop clearance from the strings where they, up high on the neck? And the other thing is, do I have enough travel in my J hooks to pull them down tight? You want to kind of balance both of those things. So that's really all there is to it.
Yeah, and people sometimes don't like to pull a banjo head off to measure it first, but that would be the most fail-proof thing to do before you order one. And if you order the wrong one, we'll talk you through that. You can return it and just cover the shipping. We'll get the right one back out to you. This is actually my signature banjo head. It has my little logo there, but no secret, it's made by Remo, which makes really good heads. But if you need a banjo head, you can give us a call, 833-BANJO-BEN, or come to banjobenclark.com, and we'll help you get a new head on that banjo.